Welcome to Brown's Rod and Custom, your home for street rods, muscle cars, and Volkswagen content. This is my dad, Big Ron. He's our body man and fabricator. This is my beautiful wife, Megan, our editor-in-chief and supporter. And this is me, Adam, the designer and mechanic for our projects. If you find our videos helpful, like and subscribe for more content.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Brown's Rod and Custom. We're going to do a video here kind of outlining some of the mistakes that we made and also some of the issues we ran into and things, whether it be from lack of knowledge or just bad luck. That way, hopefully, you guys, even if one of you gets anything from this, then this was worth making. I've watched so many videos on YouTube trying to figure out how to do very specific things, right? Especially when it comes to this, the engine and the suspension on this 73 Volkswagen thing. Because I am in no way, shape, or form a Volkswagen mechanic. I am a mechanic, but I'm not a Volkswagen mechanic. But I'm quickly becoming one. Give you a little backstory here. I bought my 1973 thing probably 2 years ago, two and a half, something like that. I had no intention of building a Volkswagen thing. I didn't know what a Volkswagen thing was. I went to buy a 73 Super Beetle convertible for my wife, Megan. In doing that, in this guy's backyard sat this 1973 Volkswagen thing, and I thought, I really like that. That's really kind of cool. But it had no motor, no transmission, so on. We gave the guy $300 for it, for the whole thing. Honestly, he was going to cut it in half and cut it up and sell it for parts and so on, and I just couldn't let him do that because I knew that we had the ability to save it if we wanted to. And I am in the business, and most of the guys that I know and that my dad knows, we're in the business of saving these classic cars. It's one of those deals, and I know that some of the wives and whatnot will watch this and go, you go to a car show and you're buying a car, you're buying parts, and it's just going to happen, right? Even when you say, especially when you say, I'm not buying anything, I'm just going to look, you're going to buy something, it's going to happen. That's what happened with the Chevelle, that's what happened with the thing, it's just how it works out. But I do have a very supportive wife who believes in me and my father and what we're doing, and that's very helpful. So long story short, we didn't have a motor, we didn't have a transmission, it didn't have a floor. So I did not want to spend $3,500 to $5,000 on a Volkswagen engine, especially when I just wanted a stock, reliable Volkswagen engine for this. So I got lucky. I was on Facebook Marketplace, and I found a guy in St. Petersburg, St. Pete Beach, who had bought a dune buggy that had a running 1600 dual ports in it, and it also came with a race engine. And so he had pulled this running engine out, had, from what I understand of it, next to no miles or hours, and it really doesn't look like it does either. There's no carbon buildup on the pistons. It doesn't smoke. I've changed the oil. It looked perfect. I mean, there's no sign that this was a bad engine, right, per se. So the only thing it had was some dented, you can see them down here, they're blue, pushrod tubes. It had stock ones and they were dented on a couple of the pushrod tubes. So, long story short, I purchased this engine from him, long block, for $400. Okay, big gamble. This huge price difference between what I was trying to do and what everybody else was doing, right? And I didn't necessarily have an engine laying around to rebuild or anything, or for cores or any of that. So I was literally an A. So I bought the long block. It came with the fan shroud, 10, and it had the generator mount and the oil fill cap and PCV, and it had a distributor in it. That was about it. It also came with this cool exhaust that you see here, off the dune buggy, and it came with new push rod tubes, okay, which is the blue ones that you see down here. It had the stock style valve covers, the metal valve covers. They were painted red, I think, but they didn't seal very well on one side. I think it was this side. So anyway, I buy this motor. I bring it home. Turns easy by hand. I have very minimal shaft play, if any, that I can tell at the time. And here we go, right? And so I start on a path of how I want this to look, right? And what am I missing? So literally the next day, I knew I needed an intake manifold with the intakes, right? I did not have that. So I found another guy in St. Pete. My wife works in St. Pete, so I'm down there all the time. Probably 5 days a week. I'm in St. Pete for some amount of time. So he had this off of his Carmen Kia. He had put, I think, dual Webers or something on it. So I went and purchased this intake manifold for $60 with the intakes and all the things, the boots and everything else. So I have $460 in the long block and the intake manifold at this point. Okay. So then I decide, all right, I need to seal this thing up, right? So I went to Fisher Buggies, and I believe it was right about $100. I bought a 009 electronic distributor. Okay. And I also bought a fuel pump for an alternator. And that was the first time that I realized that I had decisions to make on which way I was going to go here, right? The motor came with the generator. I just didn't know anything about it. And there was a fan attached to it in here, and it spun, and it probably worked, honestly. But Fisher Buggies enlightened me here on there's differences in parts, right? So, and this is a quick disclaimer. If I misstate something, I apologize. But I'm going to do my best to get this information right. So don't freak out if I'm not 100% right, but I think I'm pretty close, okay? Or else I wouldn't be doing this. So the first thing I realized I had to decide on was what fuel pumps to get, okay? Because apparently they're different. And the rod that's under the fuel pump, they're different lengths, right? So a generator, I believe, has a longer one. This is where I could be wrong. And the alternator had a shorter one. I did this a couple months ago, so bear with me. But I had the rod. It came in a box with a bunch of parts with the motor. And so I had it with me. I brought a baggie of parts. So if you ever go to do something like this, bring what you have. I had the fuel push rod, the fuel rod, for a alternator. Okay, it was the right size. They measured it and said, "This is what you have." I said, "Okay." And at that point, they informed me that a new alternator kit was like $250. And I said, "Okay." And they helped me to understand that that is a sizable upgrade for Volkswagen, right? So I thought, okay, I'm going to do that. But I didn't have the money at the time to just buy all this stuff. I had to piece this together, right? So we had the long block, $400. We had $60 in the intake, We had, let's call it $100 on the distributor. I think the fuel pump was $20 or $30. It wasn't very expensive for the alternator. And the difference is I think it's kicked over just a little more to make this fit. So then, what I did is that, all right, how do I want this to look? I know I'm missing 10s. The only one I had was this one. So while I was getting the distributor and the fuel pump, I asked them if they had the 10s, and they did. So they weren't very expensive. I think I got it. One was $30, the other was like $40. It wasn't that bad. So I bought the 10s, and they were black. And I also got with them, and make sure if you're buying 10s to request this if they don't come with it, the new screws. Okay, the flathead screws, stainless steel screws, just looks so much better. You know, if you don't have them, it's almost impossible to get them on without just going to hardware store and buying them. So we had 10s, long block, intake, distributor, fuel pump. That pretty much sealed everything off. Okay, and then this thing sat for a couple weeks, and then I said, okay, I need to get this running. What do I need? So got with my wife, and we decided we were going to do about a pretty sizable order from J-Bucks, okay, which was going to be the alternator kit, the chrome MP alternator kit, which I believe was $250, give or take. That came with the belt, the pulley, the nut kit, the pins, and the chrome alternator, okay. What it didn't come with, oh, and the mount. What it did not come with is the oil fill pieces that you needed, and it did not come with the bolts to hold the 10s onto the fan shroud, and it didn't come with a fan or the hub kit, okay, the bolt, the sleeve and the bolt on the back side of the fan. So when it gives you all of these options, and if you've watched the other videos, you understand what I'm saying. I laid all this out, but get the options, okay? If it says, do you need the shim kit? Do you need the spacers? Yes, you do. Do you need the hub kit? Yes, you do. And if you were like me and had a generator and had a fan, keep it because you can reuse your fan, barring it's in decent condition. Somehow, some way, we threw ours away. So, in the middle of getting these parts and wanting to put all of this on, I had to realize real quick, I'm missing parts, right? I'm missing a fan. That's huge. I'm not putting this on without a fan. And I'm also missing a couple 6mm nuts that go on the studs on the back to hold the pins on. Missing these, which I just went ahead and used my ones I had left over from my tents, and so on and so forth. And you know, you're quickly realizing that even after you've spent a ton of money, you're looking at it going, shit, there's more I needed to get. I just didn't know. I wish there was a video or something that just kind of outlined all of this, which is why I'm doing this. So, called Fisher Buggies back. They had the fan, which is great. Went and got the fan. Went to my local hardware store the next day, got the two 6mm washers and nuts to mount the alternator to the 10s, the chrome 10s, and that was huge because it at least gave us the ability to start putting this thing together, right? So, what we didn't know was, you know, there were videos on how to assemble this, but they make it look incredibly easy, and they don't go over the pitfalls and mistakes and issues and so on, right, that you're going to run into. For example, the fan. And a lot of this has to do with just aftermarket parts, you know. And if you've ever built a car before, you'll understand what I'm trying to say here. OEM parts typically, like 99% of the time, fit better than aftermarket. Okay, they just do. They were meant to fit. So the problem I had was the hub spacer, the fan spacer, did not want to slide over the shaft on the back side here for the fan. Okay, so I had to. We tapped it on. We took a big socket and just kind of slowly tapped it on. We lubed it up and tried to slide it over. You watch these videos, these guys just take it and slide it on, slide it back off. That is not a thing. If you're using an aftermarket like an MP, which I did, hub spacer and nut that holds the fan on, it's not a thing. At least it wasn't for me. And that's MP to MP, right? So I had an MP chrome alternator with a MP hub kit. So that was one of the problems. The 6mm nuts were another problem. And then they tell you need to put shims on and this, that, and the other. And that was pretty well laid out in some other videos. But I ended up using 4 shims in order to get my fan not to hit my fan shroud. Okay, and this is an OEM fan shroud. I don't believe this is aftermarket. The other 10s are aftermarket, but this was factory. I saw a bunch of videos where they went from 1 shim to 3 shims, and I ended up using 4. But that was kind of part of the issue. And then the other end, when you go to slide the fan, okay, over that spacer, it's got kind of a D-looking hole, okay, that you got to kind of put this over. It wasn't sliding over, so I ended up taking a file to both the fan, the hole on the fan, and I mean barely filed it, but just enough. And this took me 20 minutes to just sit there, trial and error, because I didn't want to take too much off and have it wobble or do something weird. I wanted to just literally get it just right. And then finally did. I actually filed down around the hub spacer where it had to slide over as well, and that got it. And then everything else went easy. So that was kind of what we dealt with this. Some of the issues we had with the alternator. Not a huge deal, but you know, if you guys are anything like me, it's great that I have Fisher buggies down the street. When I say down the street, I mean it's going to take me an hour and 10 minutes to get there, whatever time I'm there, and an hour and 10 minutes back, right? So I've lost 2, 3, 4 hours, depending on how long I'm there, just to go get anything, right? Locally. But if I'm missing something that they don't have, right? I can order from JBugs, I can order from thingparts.com, I can order from CP1, anywhere. I'm looking at minimum 3 to 4 days to 2 weeks, right? For that to get here, depending on where it's coming from, everything you go through, blah, blah, blah. So if you're trying to do something and you've got to wait 2 weeks, a week and a half, 2 weeks, days, that's frustrating, that sucks. So you're trying to understand what you need so that you don't have to go through that, right? So moving forward, I also bought the JBugs 34-pick -3 carburetor, and knowing I didn't have an air intake, I went ahead and bought I think it was like $25 for the MP chrome air cleaner, just to kind of make it finish off the look. Carburetor was on sale. I believe I spent $66 with free shipping because I bought a bunch of other stuff. So that wasn't bad at all, and it works great. You know, 99% of this, I mean, it's a super simple install, but 99% of this is understanding how to tune it and what screws and whatnot are what, right? So if you're not a Volkswagen person that's dealt with this before, and you're like me and have dealt with muscle cars and Edelbrock carburetors and Holleys and this, that, and the other, what you see here is not what you think it is, as far as tuning and adjusting goes, which we had a little learning curve today, getting this dialed in. So that was that. I also bought a coil from Fisher Buggies, which came with the bracket. That was great, just a stock style coil. I believe that was $40, 30, $40, something like that. And I have empty spark plug wires, and I really don't know the brand of the spark plugs, but I have good plugs in it. So yeah, so that kind of finished this off. So if you think about this, I have, give or take, $1,000 in this engine, the way it looks and the way you see it. Okay. Oh, one other thing. When you buy the alternator kit from MP, you cannot reuse your stock oil fill piece here. Okay. It hits right here on the mount. I bought a chrome one, chrome MP one, thinking MP, doesn't work. It hits here. You cannot put it on. So Fisher Buggies had the MP spin-on style. That's what I went with. Ran a rubber hose down, okay, with a hose clamp. That solved that problem. It still looks good. It works. Have had no issues. It doesn't leak so far, and we're there. So this engine, I've got about $1,000 in. Probably a little less, probably like $950 to $1,000. The transmission, I'm not adding that in on the engine piece. Clutch, flywheel, starter. What do I have? I think the flywheel was like 75 or 80 bucks. I bought a new one. They wanted, I have two, as you can see here. I had two. Now, something to know, okay, guys? We put this engine in the other day and went to start it, and it was fine, except it was pumping oil out of the back of the case. Okay. What we didn't know, which you're about to know, okay, and I literally slaved VW. You're the only reason I knew this, the only reason I figured it out, or I'd still be sitting here trying to figure it out. I thought, and this is what we took out, I thought it was my rear main seal. Now, it looks pretty new. Honestly, I'm almost 1,000% sure this motor's been rebuilt. But I ordered a new rear main seal from O'Reilly's, thinking that's where the oil's coming from, it's got to be it, right? We had to pull the motor off the transmission, flywheel clutch back off, just redo all the work you just did, right? Well, what I didn't know, this little guy, okay? There's an O-ring, this one, that goes, right in here, okay? Right on the inside of this O-ring goes right in there like so, okay? That's how it goes, alright? Since I bought a new flywheel, it did not come with this. Awesome, right? So what had actually happened is we mounted all this up without the O-ring, which I'm actually 100% sure was my problem. So, mind you, the day before, I had called O'Reilly's when I found the oil leaking. Now the engine's out, sitting here. I called O'Reilly's and said I need a rear main seal. This And that's what I thought it was at first. The next day, while I'm waiting, my rear main seal is supposed to be in at 1 o'clock. It's about 11 a.m. at this point. Okay. What happens is I start watching videos. And I'm watching on flywheels and how to put in a rear main seal. Just kind of how to take it out and how to put it in, just so I didn't mess it up. What I found was, as I'm going through the videos, Slade's VW channel, he's got his flywheel sitting there just like this, and he's holding this. And I just happened to catch it. Okay? And I said, what the hell is that? And then I see where it is. And I went, holy shit, hold on a second. And I ran out to my new flywheel. Sure enough, it's not there. No O-ring. I went, son of a bitch. So, I go over to my two flywheels that I do have, this one and another one. They have this. Okay? So, I call O'Reilly's back. Well, first I call Fisher Buggies because they're kind of my go-to for just understanding Volkswagen stuff. Why not call the people that build them, right? So I call them. I said, hey, do you have this? It's like $3. I said, yeah. Now, mind you, it's like a 3-hour ordeal to go get this. I said, okay. If I didn't have this, would oil dump out of the back of my case? And I said, absolutely. And I said, okay. Good to know. Good tip. So I called O'Reilly's back, and thank God he got the right person. And they told me that my rear main seal was there, which is great, except for my rear main seal kit did not include this O-ring. They look it up again, and I bought this for a Super Beetle. Okay, finding a Volkswagen thing, I've struggled at times, so I just go to the Super Beetle, and they've made a billion of them. So 1600 dual port for a 73 Super Beetle. The Mahle, M-A-H-L-E, and I could be saying that wrong, brand rear main seal comes with this. Okay, and the way I described this O-ring was it's about the size of a $50, maybe a little bigger, black O-ring. And the guy goes, yeah, I see that. It's only on the Mahle one. Awesome. He orders it. Well, now we went from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock before I could get this. Right? So basically wasted most of the day waiting for something I honestly probably should have known. But we're learning, and that's part of the process. I'm learning Volkswagens, right? So here we are. Small block Chevys don't have O-rings on the flywheel. So finally got it. We threw these two in the bag. Went up there, got it, came back, and put it in. Put the motor in, went right in, no issues, torqued everything down the way it's supposed to go. Awesome. Went to fire the motor, fired right up, no issues, idled good actually. It still needed to be timed, totally timed, and then also, make some adjustments on the carburetor, but it fired up and idled, which we were thrilled with. Didn't have any smoke other than the initial starter, but puffed a little bit of black smoke on the first half a second, and then it was gone. And yeah, we were off to the races. Now, in between all of this, sorry about the noise. I've got a Coast Guard C-130 flying over. We're right here in Spring Hill, right by the ocean or the Gulf, and the Coast Guard base is literally 2 miles away. So, anyway, that kind of solved those issues, right? So mechanically, we were running. Awesome, right? To get it running, took some wiring, right? And this is another thing that isn't really covered very well. It is, but it isn't, depending on what ignition switch you're using, and what coil, and so on and so forth. So, what we ended up doing, I had a universal keyed ignition switch out of a street rod. Okay. It had the terminals for battery, ignition, accessory, and then in the center there was a stud for starter. Okay, starter wire. So what I did is, and I'll go over this way more in depth, but just so you have an idea, I ran a wire from the starter. Okay, and that's got the end where it plugs in, not the bolts. Okay, it's actual sticking on there. So I had to put an end on that, ran it to the positive side of the battery. Okay, well, to the battery cable. Then I took the positive cable, hooked it to the positive spot on the starter. Okay, so I had that. I needed a power wire from the coil. Okay, now this is another thing where we messed up, and hopefully you guys won't. You need a switch, like an on-off switch, like a toggle. I didn't do that at first, and when I touched the positive to the positive on the battery, it sparked. You could hear it. So what we did is we wired in a switch. Came out of the coil, positive side of the coil, ran a wire into the switch, took the other side of the wire into the other side of the switch, over to the battery, right? Or no, over to the starter, positive side of the starter. Okay, cool. I ran another wire from, yes, from the positive side of the battery cable to the ignition switch where it said battery. Okay, to there. So I had a 12 volt constant there to keep it running. Once I turn the key and you let off of it, it springs back. You don't want it to just die, right? So we did that. The starter, coil, 12 volt constant. Ran another wire from the electric choke to the positive side of the battery cable, and also ran a wire from the coil, positive side of the coil, over to the idle control solenoid, I believe it is, idle something solenoid that comes off the side of the carburetor over here. I think it's shut off solenoid, something to that, cut off, something to that effect. And that worked out great. And that's kind of what we did for the wiring into this. So what we've got, we went over cost breakdown on the engine. We went over some of the pitfalls and things you're going to need, some of the issues that we ran into, especially when it comes to the flywheel O-ring, okay, and some of the missing pieces or pieces you'll need to reuse from your generator on your alternator kit, right? I think we've discussed pretty much in detail that it is possible to get a good running engine without spending thousands of dollars. And honestly, a show-worthy engine. I have about somewhere between $900 and $1,000 in this engine, the way it sits, okay, running. That's with the valve covers, all the bits, okay. That includes oil, seals, everything. Now, wiring this, I think we went over that a little bit. I need to do a better job of that and physically show you. I have to move the camera and do all the things, and I'll do that in a little bit. But understanding that it is possible, okay, to have to be Johnny on the spot. You got to have a little bit of luck, and you got to have money. And you have to understand, do your homework on what you're going after, right? What you need. I knew I needed an engine, a long block. I didn't have any parts with it, but I needed a long block that ran, right? That didn't smoke, that was really just a decent motor. And a lot of you guys know this. That is not often easy to find, right? Unless you know somebody or you have stuff laying around and you understand the history of it. A lot of times, and you guys know this, there's a lot of scams. There's a lot of people that just don't give a shit, you know, and will tell you, yes, it runs great, and you get it home and it knocks, right? What do? You know, you've already paid them, they've vanished. You met them in a parking lot somewhere. It's just how this works, right? So sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. So be ready for that, okay? And this is why we try not to overpay, right? $400 for an engine for anything that is an automobile is not bad. You would consider that a good deal. To get lucky enough to get one that doesn't smoke, looks like it's been rebuilt and has no issues other than my own stupidity, not putting a seal in. I can't stress to you how much I thought I had a cracked block, and I just didn't know. Cracked case. I was looking, I'm like, shit, what, this is not what I needed to happen here. When I started seeing oil puddle up here, we probably lost half a quart of oil. Came out of this thing in a hurry. It only at that point fired for about a second, you know, because we were way off on the timing, and we were way off as far as adjustment, and we weren't there. What did get this there though was, okay, I need to get it timed right. So I knew, I marked it, the white mark, that's number one. I knew that was there. I knew number one is right here, based off my 10s and everything I've read. I pulled the plug. We spun the motor around to compression stroke. Piston came up. I could see the top of the piston. Pushed my finger out with compression. Said, okay. There's a, you can't see it right now, but there's a white mark on the pulley. In the factory pulleys, they have an indentation for where top dead center is. And so I marked that with a white marker we had. Same one I marked this. And I got that to top dead center, which was right where the crank seal, the case comes together here, right there. Said, okay, rotor's pointing at number one. I'm at top dead center. Piston's at top dead. Okay. Put the plug back in, put the wire on, sealed up the cap. We're close here, right? Close enough that it should fire. Carburetor, you know, I did no adjustments to it before we started it, before we actually started it. Out of the box, set it down, go. In hindsight, what I should have done is got some carburetor cleaner and kind of sprayed this thing down. Just to clean up the carburetor before I ever mounted it and fired it. I did not do that. So if you're going to do this, you should probably do that, just to make sure that all the oils and everything are off, right? You're not clogging anything up, clogging up the jets, anything weird. Now, the on-off switch for the coil is critical. That was something that we had to do. And we pretty much had it at that point, okay? So, with that, we got it to fire. And that's fantastic. It was one of the happier moments I've had in a while, other than getting married, right? So that was huge. But now we got to tune it, right? So that required, we have a timing light, but it's the old style. It doesn't show RPM, so I had no way of knowing what RPM I was at. Watched some videos on how to tune the carburetor and how to kind of preset everything so that it should be close. Got all that figured out. I will do another video that goes very in depth on how to do that, and I will show you. I'll physically have it running and kind of mess with it, and you'll see what it does. Okay, but today we managed to get it timed. I got it running, and it was a struggle. It did not want to run for a minute. We did get the electric choke hooked up. We got the idle cutoff solenoid, I think it is, wired up after the fact. We got it up to temp and started making the adjustments on the bypass and the volume screws, and kind of went down that road. So that was critical. But yeah, I just wanted to go over with you guys just kind of a synopsis of what we have, where we're at on the engine, transmission, and all that. Breakdown of price, some of the oddball left field things that hopefully save you some money and some time, and to just give you a better understanding of, not that you don't already have it, but in case you didn't, of aftermarket parts don't always fit perfect the first time. And I think that's universally known for the most part at this point, but when it comes to the empty alternator, it's awesome. But it was a little bit of a struggle, and most of the struggle, and I take full responsibility for this, was because we threw away the generator with the fan on it. I'm not really sure how that happened, but it did. And it had the pieces we needed. If we would have kept that generator with the fan, we'd have had the hub kit that fit, the fan that fit, we'd have had the two 6mm nuts with the washers. All of that would have been there, right? So critical, don't throw your stuff away until you're done. When you know you don't need it anymore, okay? Don't sell it, don't throw it away, just don't. It will absolutely come back to bite you in the ass, so don't do it. But otherwise, you know, I'm really proud of this. I love the way it looks and the way it turned out. This was one of the key design elements of the car. It was just the painted tins, the chrome, the kind of street rod muscle car style up the engine. But to have, at the same time, it's a stock 1600cc dual port. There are no performance parts on this. Other than the electronic 009 distributor, which really isn't a performance upgrade, and the alternator, which again isn't a performance upgrade, it's stock. And that's exactly what I wanted for the person who's going to buy this 73 Volkswagen thing. I wanted them to be able to get in and fire it up. I wanted it not to smoke. I wanted it to run like a brand new one off the showroom floor from 1973 or better. I like to call that OEM plus. In OEM plus, we went alternator instead of generator. We went electronic distributor instead of the points. You know, that kind of thing. That's OEM plus, right? You just kind of brought modern technology into old school tech, right? To make things run smoother and better and be more reliable. That's what that is. So something to definitely keep in mind, because if you're wondering, this exhaust does not go on this thing. This is the exhaust that came with the motor. I would probably put an empty exhaust on it. I think the black with chrome tips to go out the factory rear bumper cutout. So it'll probably be pretty quiet. But that's what I'm looking for. If somebody else wants to change that when they buy it, that's more power to them, right? But you know, I didn't want to turn off potential buyers and so on and so forth. I like louder, but it's not my car. So, or it's not gonna be my car. But remember, there are some critical things here. For instance, this camo ring. You don't want to not have that if you buy a new flywheel. And from what I've been reading, if you put a new rear main seal in your car, they recommend that you replace this anyway. And it pops right out, you pop it right back in. I took some lithium grease, some white lithium grease around it, popped it in. Done, right? Just want to make sure it's loose. And that was that. But anyway, guys and girls, that's what I've got for you. This is our $1,000 motor. I've got some videos that will add into this of it running. The first start and our initial reactions to that, which was kind of cute. And you hear me kind of hooting and hollering a little bit. And you know, now that we have it to this point and tuned, I'll add in some clips of it, you know, where it doesn't hesitate, doesn't, you know, do anything weird. So, yeah, I hope some of you will find this useful. You know, I wish I'd have known. But again, not being a Volkswagen person, never building one before, to, you know, there's a million videos on YouTube and out there, but you got to be very specific, and you almost have to know what to look for, or at least what area you're looking for. Like, I had no idea I was going to have an oil leak. That was the last thing on my mind, right? Boy, did I ever. So, learned a lesson there. Hard one, but we learned it. And also, you know, guys, you know, I can't stress this enough. Understanding what you need and having it on hand when you're ready to do one of these things is critical. You know, if you don't have what you need, you will fail, and you will be sitting here going, shit. And a lot of you, you know, don't have that many weekends and days you can just give to things, you know, to work on. And getting all of that lined up, you know, having all of that ready to go, so, and laid out and organized. For the love of God, be organized. Lay everything out on the table, watch some videos, understand what you're about to do and what you're going to need tool-wise. You know, hell, another thing that we ran into, which cost us 3 days, I needed, so we put the flywheel on the first time without the seal, not knowing. Looked up the torque specs on the flywheel gland nut. It is 253 pounds, foot-pounds. That's a lot. Our torque wrenches only go to 150. Luckily, our neighbor used to run a speed shop and was a mechanic and whatnot, and had a snap-on monster torque wrench that went to 250. So he let us borrow that. But the other problem we ran into was, no matter what we did, this motor wanted to spin as I'm trying to put 250 foot-pounds on, right? On the flywheel gland nut. I needed the IMPI flywheel lock, okay? Which, you know, doesn't seem like a big deal. It cost us 3 days. Just not knowing that we were going to need that. We were operating under the understanding that we would just, you know, put a socket on the nut here on the balancer, hold it, I could crank it down, rock and roll. No. Not at 253 foot-pounds torque. That's nope, ain't gonna happen. So, got on Amazon. They had it with, I think it was 2-day shipping. It was $18. So an $18 tool cost me 3 days. 3 days when I wanted to start the motor for the first time. If I was doing this for a client, I just lost money for 3 days for an $18 tool that nobody had in stock, and you're just done, right? So things that I would highly recommend getting if you're going to put a motor in on a Volkswagen. MP flywheel lock tool. I would also get either a torque wrench that'll go to 250 foot-pounds, which is probably going to be a couple $100 or better, or the MP torque, I think it's a torque modifier, something to that effect. So basically it's a gear, it's got a handle on it, and so basically 1 foot-pound with a ratchet, it multiplies it to 9 foot-pounds, right? So to get the 253 foot-pounds with this tool, I could have used a 3/8 ratchet and took it to 28 foot-pounds. And 28 foot-pounds, I think it's 28.1, some of that affects the math, but it equates out to 253 foot-pounds, right? Because of the tool. It modifies the torque you're doing, magnifies it, whatever. So I think it's like 80 bucks. It's not cheap, but time's not cheap either. You know, your time is worth money. You know, and at the end of the day, if you're sitting here struggling for half a day because you don't have the right tools, well, you know, here you are. I just did it. But I ordered the torque modifier, and I bought and have here the flywheel lock. So that if I ever go to do this again on another car, or this car, never know, it'll take me seconds, maybe minutes, instead of days, right? Hours and days. So be aware of these things, guys, right? I believe they sell a tool too. I don't know what it costs, but it's for the rear main seal. Basically a gland nut with a big washer. That's the same size as this, right about, and it just threads into the flywheel and pulls this in, right? Instead of taking the old one with a little rubber mallet and tapping and trying to get it in, you could have it in another flat with that tool, if you do this all the time. So, things to know. But I want to thank you guys for watching. Again, we're trying our best to get the best content we can out. I do want to thank our subscribers and our new subscribers, and our viewers that haven't subscribed yet. We hope you do. It's free. It would really help us out. We're trying to get this channel off the ground. We'll be doing things like this, and if you're working on a classic Volkswagen, street rod, muscle car, we are going to go over some very in-depth things here shortly, currently and coming up, that might help you. From vintage air to suspension to how to build an engine to bodywork and paint, you know, the whole thing. How to set things up, how to tune them, full-on builds like you have here. We're going to go over this stuff in depth in hopes that it just helps you guys out. That's the whole point. You know, I don't know if we'll ever get to a point where we can monetize and make any money off of this, but I enjoy seeing your comments and understanding that we're helping you guys, and that we're just, even if it's not showing you how to do something, making you aware of what to look for. What we've found on some of these projects is should be pretty critical for you guys, and should help a lot, and I think it is helping. So I'm going to leave you with that. Hope you have a great night, and thank you for watching Brown's Rod and Custom, and I will have a couple videos for you coming probably tonight and tomorrow. kind of going over what'll be this video, and then there'll also be videos on Ron priming the passenger side of the thing and the front, and there will also be videos on I'm going to do some tomorrow on the wiring, how to wire up your motor, whether you have it on, you know, you're trying to bench fire it, or you have it in a frame and it's sitting there ready to go, what you need to have hooked up to be able to be successful. And I'm going to go over that in a way where it's very clear and concise, so that you guys understand fully what we did, and I'll show you that it works, and what happens when you do it right. So, and you know, we think we're right. We haven't blown anything up yet, so that's good. And everything's working, so I think we're cool. But anyway, I'm going to leave you guys with that, and we'll talk at you soon. Thanks for watching Brown Tried Custom.